Hey everyone, it's Mariana and happy Halloween. Or if you're watching this later, happy whatever day it is right now. Since you guys really enjoyed that casual sit-down video that I posted recently about all of the movies that I can't stop watching that I own, I thought I should do a Halloween version of that and show you all of my horror and thriller Blu-rays. Because to this day, one of my most requested videos is a Blu-ray collection, and since I don't want to sit down here for 3 hours and show you every single one, I'm just going to keep doing this in sections. So today, as I mentioned, it's all about horror and thrillers. Now, I'm not going to show you my action thrillers. I'm only going to show you the thrillers that are kind of on the scary side of things, or crime thrillers. You'll see what I'm talking about. Let me show you all of my scary movies. This thing is getting a little bit out of control on me. So one of the things that I completely ignored while doing my previous sit-down video is my Criterion collection. And I mentioned it in the beginning and I never showed you any of the Blu-rays that are in it. So let me show you some of the thrillers and horror in there first, and then we will move on to the drawers over here. First up, and this is the first Criterion Blu-ray that I bought, Mulholland Drive. Now, technically, not horror. I don't know how to classify this properly. This is just a weird and spooky film that may not be so spooky to other people, but this just is really stressful and unsettling to me. I love this movie, even though I've only seen it once, and I really can't wait to see it again because this is an event of a movie, and I don't need to sell anyone on Mulholland Drive. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Next, I have The Silence of the Lambs, and I am just such a fan of this whole thing. Let me show you. Look at this whole situation here. I am such a fan of this. Obviously, the discs are in here. Silence of the Lambs, another classic. Really, really creepy, more like a crime thriller, but definitely something I would classify as horror just because, yeah. Another classic, Rosemary's Baby. Now, obviously, let's not talk about Roman Polanski. Let's not get into that. But the film is fantastic and it's kind of a staple in any collection. This is my most recent Criterion purchase. I have not watched this yet. I mean, I've seen Rosemary's Baby. I just haven't watched this with all the special features and everything. Very much looking forward to it. I'm not going to be talking much about these movies, by the way, because I have quite a few and I don't want this to be, as I mentioned, a 3-hour ordeal. My last Criterion that I have to show you is Del Toro's The Devil's Backbone. I do obviously own Pan's Labyrinth, but it is not a Criterion. I'll show it to you later if you haven't seen it in my previous collection video, but yes, The Devil's Backbone, such an interesting, dramatic, sad ghost story. I am a big fan of this film, and if you haven't seen it, I feel like it's a little bit underrated. Not necessarily underrated, but not too many people have watched this one, and you should really check it out if you haven't. This is a very good film and a very good story. Now, moving on to my regular Blu-rays, which are all in these 2 drawers over here. I have most of them alphabetized. However, I have a few pulled out over here because I am planning to watch them or I was watching them. So those are not in any kind of order, but after that, we'll go alphabetical. So first of all, I watched this recently, rewatched this, I think for the second time, Chronicle. This is not necessarily a horror film, but it is definitely a thriller, a found footage thriller that's actually really good. And it kind of ventures into the horror territory eventually. If you haven't seen this, check it out. One of the best found footage films out there. Not to spoil anything, but I may be working on something about found footage. Keep an eye on my channel. Another found footage film over here, if I can get it, is The Blair Witch Project. Obviously, this is pretty much a found footage classic, and I bought this recently. This is probably the most useless Blu-ray purchase because it's not like the footage benefits from being on Blu-ray, but I really wanted to see it again, and I wanted to see all of the special features that were on this Blu-ray, so I bought it, and I generally thought it should be in my collection because this movie and we have an interesting relationship. I was not super impressed by it when I watched it for the first time, which was only a few years ago, but it really stuck with me, and I oddly keep wanting to watch it. I don't know what's going on here, but yeah. The Blair Witch Project. Next, I have a couple underrated thrillers. The Grey, which is a really awesome survival thriller. If you like winter settings for your thrillers, you have to check this one out. Plus, Liam Neeson, obviously. And another one is The Guest. This is not a survival thriller, but I guess it's a survival thriller for the victim of The Guest. This is starring Dan Stevens. It is set around Halloween. Once again, not particularly scary, but the setting and the intensity of the events really makes it appropriate for the season. Check it out. Really good thriller. The ending is a little bit iffy, but the rest of it is excellent. Lastly, in this little stack is Seven. This is a David Fincher film, one of my personal favorites from David Fincher. This is about a serial killer, and this killer is kind of obsessed with the 7 deadly sins, which I think is a really cool premise. Once again, not particularly horror, but it does get quite graphic, and there is probably one of the best jump scares that actually works. Scared the shit out of me when it happened. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about if you've seen the movie, but yeah, excellent. Excellent thriller. Finally, moving on to these drawers that I am about to struggle with because I remember how that went last time. 28 Days Later, a zombie classic from Danny Boyle. Super low budget, super indie looking, but I love this movie. I was not as impressed with it when I watched it for the first time, but I recently rewatched it and I realized how amazing everything is. Plus, this is starring Cillian Murphy, and I kind of love Cillian Murphy a lot. Next up, obviously, Alien and Aliens. These are 2 movies that I forgot to mention in my most watched video. I have seen these so many times, and I don't know what happened, but I just skipped over them when I was talking about movies. But yes, these are absolutely among my most watched, and these are part of why I got into horror in the first place. I kind of saw them when I was very, very young, but I immediately became obsessed. I always go back and forth on which one I like better. I think I prefer Aliens still, but Alien is really, really good. And whenever I watch it, I'm like, do I like Aliens more though? Because Alien is pretty freaking amazing. But yeah. Both of these are fantastic. I do not own Alien 3 or Alien 4 because I pretend they don't exist. I am not a fan of those movies, but these 2 I am a fan of. Also, to go along with that, kind of controversial, Prometheus. This I would definitely not classify as horror, but because I was talking about Alien and Aliens, which I would say are sci-fi horror, then I have to mention that I own this. I enjoy this one as well. I know some people didn't like it that much, and it does have problems, but you know what? I like it. Beetlejuice. This is a horror comedy, a nice, spooky, fun movie. I love it. I did not expect to love it as much as I did. I only saw it for the first time a few years ago, and I immediately fell in love with it, had to own it. And yeah, if you haven't seen Beetlejuice, if you were like me and you took forever to watch this movie, watch it. I know it looks super cheesy and some of it is dated, but it is so entertaining and a little bit spooky. Next up, Black Swan. You guys know I own this one, and there is some debate of whether or not this is horror to begin with, but I do think this is psychological horror, especially on my last watch. I definitely felt the psychological horror of it all. It is a little bit more on the psychological drama side of things, but you know, the more you watch it, the creepier it gets. I am making such a mess already. Cabin in the Woods. Once again, you guys know I love this one. This is something that gets better and better the more horror films I watch, because obviously this pays so much tribute to the genre. It kind of makes fun of the genre, but it's also a legit horror movie. Love this one. If you haven't seen it, or if you saw it and you were like, I don't know, this is not that great, watch more horror movies and then watch this one and you will realize that this is freaking brilliant. Guess what? I have more found footage, and that is Cloverfield. You guys, I swear I am not a big fan of found footage, but the found footage films that I do like, I apparently own. So this one I have a weird relationship with, because I realize how flawed this movie is. It is not perfect. There are some really dumb things about it. However, It's just entertaining. I'm a big fan of it. I don't know why. I want to keep watching it. I am always into it when I'm watching it. I think it's the world building. I think it's the sci-fi angle. I like it, even though it's silly. And also, of course, I own 10 Cloverfield Lane. This one is obviously not found footage, and this is, in my opinion, a much better film. But yeah, I have this. Now, I don't know how many of you know this about me, but I am actually a fan of the Conjuring movies. Just the first two. I don't love the spin-off films, and I don't know how I'm going to feel about the next Conjuring film, but these two I am a big fan of. Yeah, once again, they do have some silly stuff in them and some jump scares, which I'm not a fan of, but something about these two just works for me, and I love the lead actors, Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. Love both of them, so I think that's a big part of why I enjoy watching them so much. Crimson Peak. I know this is a bit of a controversial choice. I know some people did not like this movie at all, but I was a big fan. I actually loved it. I think it's gorgeous. It's such a beautiful and dark ghost story, and yeah, I think people just expected a different kind of movie from this, and they got something that was very Del Toro and very stunning and kind of a slow burn, and they were like, what? Where's my scary horror movie? And it's not really like that. So give it another chance if you didn't like it at first. Just come in with proper expectations, because the advertising did not do this movie any favors. Not a horror movie, but we cannot have a Halloween collection video without The Crow. You guys know how I feel about The Crow. Moving on. The Dragon Tattoo Trilogy. This is the original Swedish version, and I will defend this forever because I am such a fan of these movies. I loved the books when I read them. I love these movies. I'm not a big fan of the David Fincher version because it's just, I don't think it's as good. You can fight me in the comments. This is great, and I love Noomi Rapace in this role. This is where I first saw her, and she is the only person for this role as far as I'm concerned. Also, obviously, these are not horror movies, but these are really excellent and dark crime thrillers, so appropriate. The Fly. This is a wonderful sci-fi classic and quite a sad one. If you're a fan of Jeff Goldblum, you absolutely have to watch this. But, you know, be prepared to be really sad about Jeff Goldblum because he is slowly turning into a fly. That is not a spoiler. That is kind of the premise of this movie. So, yeah. But I watched this once again recently. This is something I actually watched when I was growing up, so it's very familiar to me. But when I rewatched it, loved it even more. Green Room. You guys know this is backwards. Green Room. I am such a fan of this. I saw this in theaters. Nobody was talking about it, and I was just blown away. This is edge of your seat shit, and it is sometimes very graphic, but so worth it. I love it. I love Green Room. Highly recommended. Also, the director's previous film, what is it called? Blue Ruin is very good. It's not as intense as this one. It's more kind of psychological and a slow burn, but so good. Great revenge film. But yeah, if you haven't seen Green Room, please do yourself a favor and watch it. Things are getting progressively scarier in here because next up I have Hereditary. I don't think this movie needs a lot of introduction, and I do have a bit of a essay / spoiler review on this on my channel, so check it out. But yeah, I absolutely love this film. One of my favorites of last year. Are we halfway through? We are halfway through. I am done with the first drawer. Moving on to the next one. Wow, I have like 4 in a row here. Let's start with a Korean film. I Saw the Devil. This one is the prime example of a film that walks the line between thriller and horror, and this is one of the best revenge films you will ever watch. I guarantee you, if you haven't seen this, watch it. Just be prepared for some graphic violence, but it is so good and one of my favorite Korean films for sure. Then something completely different and a bit more fun in the traditional horror sense of things. It Chapter 1. I will buy It Chapter 2 as well, but for now, I only have the first part. This one is surprisingly rewatchable and, as I mentioned, quite a bit of fun and a really good adaptation of half of King's novel. Then, of course, I have It Follows, which For some reason, I don't have a review of on my channel. I have no idea how this happened, but I have to rewatch it and do a review at some point because I do really, really enjoy this film. Obviously, I think a lot of people like this one, even though it kind of breaks its own rules, but you know, that's besides the point. Then a classic, I don't know if we could call this a horror film, but it is certainly scary at certain moments, and that is Jurassic Park. Can we just take a moment to appreciate the steelbook? You know, I love my steelbooks, but yeah, Jurassic Park, a classic. A lot of us grew up with this movie because I know a lot of people in my audience are about the same age as me. So yeah, you have to have this. I mean, if you grew up in the 90s, how do you not have Jurassic Park? Then, of course, I have Let the Right One In. This is the Swedish one. No, I do not like the American remake. I think you guys need to watch this again and realize that this is better in every way. I know taste is subjective, but I tried rewatching the remake recently and I couldn't even finish it. That's how annoyed I was by it. But this is a masterpiece and one of my favorite horror films and generally films of all time. Nightcrawler. This is obviously a thriller, not a horror film, but you know, the personality of Lou Bloom is quite horrifying, and I am a big fan of this movie. Another film that is not a horror film, but I just have to show you is Oldboy. Once again, one of my favorite films of all time. And just like I Saw the Devil, one of the best revenge films out there, if not the best. This might be my favorite revenge film, I'm not gonna lie. We have arrived at Pan's Labyrinth, Del Toro's masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. This is, you know, a mix of fantasy and horror, which I need to see more of in films because this is such a cool mix, but also kind of historical drama. Wonderful film. I don't know why I'm still talking. I do have a review of this. I will link all of the reviews that I have in the info box below because I have quite a few of those. Not all of the reviews that I have, obviously. I'm talking about reviews of movies that I mentioned today. Psycho, a classic from Hitchcock. I need to buy more Hitchcock films because there are some really excellent ones. Obviously, Hitchcock is a master, but this one I just had to get because once again, epic steelbook. We all go a little mad sometimes. Raw, probably my most recent purchase. Yeah, my most recent purchase. This is actually a German Blu-ray, but it is region free, so I can play it on my regular PS4, which is what I play my Blu-rays on. Yes, guys, my setup is very fancy. I don't even have a Blu-ray player. I just use my PS4. Anyways, Raw is amazing. Once again, I have a review. You should watch it. This film is just so good, and it is about cannibalism, but also about sisters and family. It's great. Prisoners, really messed up and dark from Denis Villeneuve, and you know, we can't have a collection video where we don't talk about Denis Villeneuve because, you know, I love him. He's my favorite. Not a horror film though, as you probably know. This is a mystery slash thriller slash crime situation with a lot of messed up stuff. The Ring, the remake, the American remake. Yes, you know how I was just talking about how original is better about Let the Right One In? Well, I still haven't seen the original for The Ring. I know, fake horror fan. I know. Scream. You guys know how much I love Scream. I am surprised that this is the only Wes Craven that I own because I'm also a big fan of The Nightmare on Elm Street, but somehow I have not purchased it yet. But Scream, I have. I do enjoy all 4 movies to a certain extent, but the first one is just the best of the best. The Shining. Of course, I have The Shining, one of my favorite films of all time. Once again, such an amazing fucked up movie, and this just reveals more and more layers every time I watch it. I'm about to reread the Stephen King novel, which I also love. Then I'm going to reread Dr. Sleep, and then I'm going to watch Dr. Sleep and review it. That's the plan for the beginning of November. I don't know how I'm going to finish both of these novels before the movie comes out, but you know, we'll see. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course, once again, one of my favorite films, something that I only watched for the first time a few years ago, and I immediately became obsessed with this because this movie, I just don't know. There's some kind of horror movie magic going on here, but I love this so much. This is the only one out of the franchise that I own because I am not a big fan of the rest of the franchise. To be fair, I have not finished them and I did not see any of the newer Texas Chainsaw films, but I tried watching the second one and the third one and I was just like, this is bad, especially considering that this is a freaking masterpiece. So let me know if any of the other ones are worth watching and I might check them out. But so far, this is everything. Another classic, The Thing. This is The Thing and the remake / sequel to The Thing, which we're going to ignore. Thank you so much to Scott for sending this to me because Scott is one of my longtime subscribers and he could not take anymore that I haven't seen The Thing. I think I saw this last year or 2 years ago for the first time after he sent it to me. And yeah, he was like, you know what? You haven't seen this movie. What kind of horror fan are you? Here you go. Please watch it. And thank you so much because this is just as great as everyone said it was. Not the sequel / remake, the original, obviously. Well, I guess the original is also kind of a remake. You get what I mean, guys. I am going to stop talking about this because John Carpenter's The Thing, obviously. Awesome. 2 more Korean movies. Train to Busan, one of the best zombie films out there. So good. Kind of an action take on zombies. And yeah, it's amazing. I'm sure you've heard of it. And The Wailing. What a mindfuck of a film. If you haven't seen The Wailing and you want like a solid, I don't know what I just watched, but it was awesome, kind of witchy possession, God knows what kind of movie, also kind of a police investigation. This is your movie. I have a review where I am more coherent about what this movie is about, but yeah, watch it. It's amazing. Warm Bodies, not really scary. This is a romantic zombie movie, surprisingly good. I thought this was going to be pretty bad, but this is actually really cute. Cute romantic movie about zombies. Who would have thought? Obviously, The Witch. You guys know how much I love this one. I just reviewed The Lighthouse and Robert Eggers has something against me understanding the dialogue in his movies apparently because I have to watch these things with subtitles. This one though is a horror masterpiece and I am not afraid to use that word with this movie. And finally, some horror comedies. I have the entire Cornetto trilogy here. This is just hilarious. Obviously, Shaun of the Dead is the zombie comedy. I think that's the one everybody knows the most, but Edgar Wright, he's too funny. I love these movies, all of them. And then finally, Zombieland. I know the sequel just came out. I don't know if I'm going to watch it. It honestly doesn't look that great. Let me know if you saw it and you think I would like it, but I do love Zombieland a lot. It's hilarious. And that is it for my horror and thriller collection. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There is a huge mess of Blu-rays right in front of me right now that I don't want to clean, but I guess I'm going to have to. Let me know if there was anything in this video that surprised you, or if there was anything that you thought, how come you don't own this movie when you own this other one? And if you have any movie suggestions based on everything I own, let me know in the comments. Obviously, I haven't seen every single horror movie and thriller out there, so suggestions are always welcome. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, which I hope you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye.